Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. Hope you're all doing well at home and have had a good week. It's a slightly smaller version of Sunday Vibes this week, just two of us.
Compact.
James Wayne back in the building.
I am.
How are we doing?
I've always been in the building, but not in front of camera. I'm doing good. Yeah, just cracking on with Saturday Social. Got doing shoots and planning for the show, and it's fun. Yeah, it's very fun.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, who's been kind of, maybe not privy to what's been going on with Football Daily. Yeah, James is now working with Joe Tomlinson on Saturday Social. He's part of that team. So very kindly has stepped in on a few occasions to present on Football Daily over the last few weeks. But yeah, so I guess everyone who does watch Sky will have seen Saturday Social by now from yesterday. But today on Football Daily, on Sunday Vibes, we are rating every club's top transfer from the Premier League this season. Feels a little bit overdue. I feel like quite a few YouTube channels have maybe done this already or did this back in November, December time. But I thought, we've had enough of the season now, haven't we? So why not do it this time? So there should be some good debate. Speaking of debate, stop with the abuse for people's arguments in the comments and in the DMs. Sam got a ton this week. Not Did not deserve that. Even though I did disagree with him on his opinion
it's
last
fine
week.
To disagree.
You can disagree without abusing people in the DMs. Like, what are you doing with yourselves if you're getting in people's DMs and abusing them? Let's kick off with Arsenal. We're going to do this in alphabetical order. So, time codes are on screen if you're a Wolves fan and you want to see, who us talking about Wolves. But let's kick off with Arsenal. Declan Rice, obviously one of the big signings of the summer, £105 million from West Ham. I mean, he's obviously had an excellent season,
course,
James.
Yes.
We are going to be grading these on a kind of A, B, C, D scale as well, and we'll get them all up at the end in terms of their marks. But yeah, I mean, James, what have you made of Declan Rice this season? How does he compare, in your mind, to the other top Premier League signings this year?
I just think it's been an all-round success. In terms of when the signing was being made, it was heavy Arsenal, but then the City links came in, and I'm glad City didn't get him, because we've seen that.
Are you glad City doesn't get
100%? Because as much as I'm a City fan,
compared to Kovacic and Nunes,
no, but as much as I am a Man City fan, I'm an England fan too, and I've seen what's happened to Calvin Phillips. I haven't really enjoyed it. It's a player that I really want to get behind. I wouldn't like the same thing to happen to Declan Rice in terms of limiting him, maybe not to the same degree as Calvin Phillips. He would no way have the same experience. Well, you would hope so anyway. But I'm just glad that there's question marks if he went to City in terms of, does he play over Rodri? How does he fit in? Is there an adjustment period? Question mark. He's gone to Arsenal. He's hit the ground running. He's carried on the kind of on the field leadership, off the field leadership that he had at West Ham, taking that into Arsenal, solidified them a lot. I think I don't want to say he's the reason for their incredible defensive record at the moment, but he's a big part of it. And he's slotted straight in. It's great for him. It's great for Arsenal. It's great for the league. It's great for England. It's just gone brilliantly, and the price tag was incredible as well. Obviously with Jack Grealish, Man City, it's the only other English 100 mil player, and it hasn't had the same degree of success. Fair enough, this season it's injuries, and in the first season it was a bit more kind of, is he a flop, is he not? There's question marks again. But Declan Rice hit the ground running, performed consistently over the season. He's a player that never gets injured as well, which is a massive thing for Arsenal. Obviously, Urian Timber came in, straight away injured. We don't even know. It's an unknown quantity, really. But in terms of the move itself, as in picking Arsenal, the fee, I actually think works, because he's that good of a player in this current age, that 100 million for a player like Declan Rice, it's fine, it's great.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? 6 months after Enzo going to Chelsea, suddenly 100 million for one of the, a Premier League proven and also one of the best central midfielders in Europe, suddenly doesn't seem that much. Having said that, though, when Declan Rice did go to Arsenal in the summer, and I know there's a lot of banter on Twitter from rival clubs and everything, and everyone wants to dunk on whatever transfer fee any club plays for their players. But like, I mean, that fee was being talked about a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's testament to Declan Rice, and I think West Ham fans would agree. I think that actually Declan Rice hasn't necessarily. It's not that. I don't think it's that Declan Rice has got that much better since going to Arsenal. It's just that he's carried on the very high level that he had at West Ham, just in a much better team.
Yeah.
And I guess it's testament to Arteta that he knew, he saw that Rice was the key there.
Yeah.
And if we were having this conversation back in November, December, when Arsenal were beginning to drop off, then I don't think we'd still recognise how good Declan Rice had been, but we would still caveat that with, they are missing Xhaka, Partey's injuries.
Yes.
That midfield hasn't necessarily looked. Ødegaard was out of form as well, so overall that midfield was not looking as good as it did last season. Fast forward to now, though, Ødegaard's back on song. Havertz has, started contributing again after a bit of a lull over Christmas. Like, he was great in that kind of November period. Not only is Declan Rice, performing out of his skin, but I mean, Arsenal look. I think we were saying on Monday Vibes, like, I think objectively you look at Arsenal now and they are the best team in the Premier League right now. They're 2 points off Liverpool at the top, but performance level wise, I think it's hard to look past them. In terms of consistency, the goals they're scoring. That doesn't mean that Arsenal are going to win the league, because there's a long way to go. But right now, I think they're the best team in the Premier League. And you look at Rice's numbers, he's 4th in Europe for progressive passes, he's 6th for passes into the final third. His progressive carrying has been, superb once again, and like you say, defensively he's been playing out of his skin as well. I think, at least in the first half of the season, he was making more tackles than he was at West Ham, which is pretty mad to think. Like, he's doing so many jobs, and Arsenal's defensive record has been amazing throughout the season. But his ability to almost perform 2 roles at once has been pretty remarkable. Only Saliba's played more minutes. We're starting pretty hot here.
Yeah,
I would have to give him an A star or an A plus or whatever.
It can't not be the highest grade possible, because, as you said, like,
if Arsenal win the league, then it's one of the best transfers we've seen in years.
Yes, yeah, because as you said, like, the kind of way people perceive, online sphere, people love to dunk on players, especially when they've got a high fee attached to them. And we haven't seen a single memeable moment from Declan Rice. And I know that's kind of a bit of a rubbish point, but it kind of shows that he's had a whole season now of he's had to adapt. I know it's not like he's the kind of player where it's not that difficult to adapt into a new system, but he's adapted into a new system. He has been consistent in both attacking, defending, controlling a game, and he's not made a single mistake. So it has to be the highest grade possible.
Yeah, I mean, and you say it's not difficult for him to adapt to a new system, but I think
him specifically,
for sure. But like, he hasn't had to do it before.
Yeah.
He was playing in a West Ham team that were often, usually giving the opposition the ball under David Moyes. He's entered a high possession, high pressing system under Mikel Arteta.
It's the Calvin Phillips. Some players just don't suit certain styles, and the fact that he's just seamlessly transitioned, it's been brilliant.
Sweet. So we start off with an agreement there, A+ on Declan Rice. This next one, I think, maybe bring a bit more debate. Aston Villa, Moussa Diaby, £52 million. I mean, he had an amazing start, didn't he? He scored on his debut against Newcastle. I mean, it was a 5-1 loss, but 2 goals and 3 assists in his first 7 appearances. I mean, we were all very excited about it at FD. Dougie Critchley, for one, maybe Moussa Diaby's biggest fan in the world, was kind of calling for this transfer to happen for about 2 years before it did. And, obviously Aston Villa started the season brilliantly, and he looked like a big part of that, playing through the centre, seemed to free up a bit. Leon Bailey on the right as well, was getting the best out of him, was linking up really well with Ollie Watkins. But kind of after September, just 2 goals and 1 assist in the following 19 appearances. 8 of his last 13 appearances have been off the bench. In that time, McGinn, Tielemans, Jacob Ramsey have been getting more minutes in those areas. He hasn't really seen... I mean, he's been basically used completely in the centre. He hasn't really seen many minutes on the wing at all. And And yeah, it's a difficult one. I think Emery has kind of said, and I don't think it's any shame to not be getting minutes in this Aston Villa team because they've been so good. And Emery has said that he is still in his kind of adaptation period to the Premier League, and actually used Leon Bailey, who's obviously been superb of late, as an example of a player. Well, I mean, they both came from Leverkusen as well, but a player coming from a different league to the Prem and adapting. But nevertheless, 52 million is a lot of money, and he was their marquee signing from last year. Like, would you have expected to have seen more output from him at this point?
Yes, as a straightforward answer to that. But he's just a kind of victim of the form of the players in his side. Like, Aston Villa are absolutely flying right now, and it's just testament to Emery that he's been able to kind of squeeze so much out of these players that, overlooked. I mean, Tielemans, like a few years ago, it was, is he going to pick Leicester? Is he going to pick United? Like, he was rated very, very highly. Kind of dipped off a little bit, but
Liverpool, with Arsenal.
Emery's kind of brought the best out of him again. John McGinn. Yeah. He's absolutely flying. It's the only way you can really describe it. Under Emery, like he's put himself in the category of best midfielders in the Premier League this season. He's in kind of, obviously not the best, but he's put himself in contention when you think about the top 10.
He's been used so much on the right and left as well.
Exactly,
like he's been so adaptable,
and captaining the side as well. And Leon Bailey as well, as you said, like. Has really come to good form, and it's unfortunate that we haven't seen more from Moussa Diaby. He's had the playing time, but as you said earlier, adaptation period needs to be considered. Like, it's you see it a lot from all around. Like, people say Bundesliga tax, this tax, that tax. It's just an adaptation period. Usually, the Premier League is not only physically difficult, but there's a side outside of actual football where you have tabloids, you've got like so much pressure from outside sources, let's say,
just living in a new country as well.
Yeah, exactly. And us as fans never really take that into consideration. We're always so happy to bag on people and to criticize for reasons that you've got to really consider, because football's a very complex game, and as much as I love Moussa Diaby, I love the idea of him coming to the Premier League. I loved it for Aston Villa as well, player that we put on the pedestal for big European clubs, and he's gone for a kind of an up and coming plucky side with an experienced manager for the European stage, and then it hasn't quite worked out how we all kind of wanted it to. But as I said, it's not okay, you have to put a little bit of blame on him, but it's a positive in a sense. Like, the reasons for him not playing as much as he is are positive reasons for Aston Villa. So it's a bit of a strange one where it's like, here's a player who potential is the ceiling for Moussa Diaby. We all know is up there with the best of them. But right now, we're seeing kind of a testing moment in his career where it's like, you're not playing in the best of form. There's quite a lot of pressure. The team around you are doing well, and you're not fully part of that. Like, how do you pull yourself together to get up to the standards? So for me, I want to put this in like a low B, because we've seen what he can do in the Premier League. We know the talent's there, but it's just a difficult period for him. If we took this at a different point in the season, as you said, if this was a few months ago, we'd be like, he's having a great time. But now we're really seeing the kind of transitional period come into play, and we're seeing him struggle a little bit. So you have to knock it down a bit. The fee is quite large, especially for Aston Villa.
Maybe their record
well,
signing,
it's post-Grealish money, so there's a bit of flexibility within that in terms of, it looks high, but then they do have that in the back pocket. But I think I'd go for maybe a C. A high C.
I was thinking B minus.
It's a bit. Yeah. I think B minus is fair. I think we've seen it, but it's just a bit disappointing.
Yeah. I feel like it's. Do we consider as well the fact that he may well start flying next season?
Exactly. He could start flying next game for all we know.
If John McGinn has had, with the Kamara injury, if John McGinn has then had to, has to move deeper at some point this season, will we see Diaby get more game time? Perhaps. Let's go for.
I think high C or low B.
Let's go C plus. Let's go C plus. Let's go over the next one. Bournemouth, unfortunately, Tyler Adams. Top signing last summer, £23 million. obviously has been injured for the entire season. Only got 20 minutes in the EFL Cup back in August. Underwent surgery on a hamstring injury in October. Expected to be back end of March. And I think, I mean, it's really, really harsh with Tyler Adams, but I think you can't just look at it from the player's perspective. You've got to look at it from the club's perspective as well. And the fact that they signed from a relegated club in Leeds, Leeds actually made a profit on the fee that they paid to RB Leipzig when they sold him to Bournemouth. I really loved the transfer. I thought it was going to be great, but since him being out, the question is actually, does he get back into this Bournemouth side? And I'm not sure if he does this season, because Ryan Christie, I mean, one of the great, I think, tactical moves by any manager this season has been Andoni Iraola's transformation of Ryan Christie into a defensive midfielder, and he's been absolutely brilliant alongside Lewis Cook. Between November and January, he won possession in the middle third of the pitch more than any other Premier League player. He's just been an absolute revelation there, and there's Bournemouth's kind of development into this season under Iraola after that nightmare start has been one of the stories of the campaign, and that midfield has been really, really solid with those two in the centre. And when you also consider that Philip Billing is also able to drop into a deeper role if needed. Alex Scott has the kind of technical chops to be able to play in a more deep lying role. Like, by the start of next season, like, Tyler Adams is going to be up against it. And had he not got that injury, and I know it's unfortunate, although he had, it was an aggravation of something he'd got in his final, in that season at Leeds. It may well, put him right back down the pecking order come the start of next season, or when he comes back into the side in March. And I just don't think there's a guarantee at this point, even though he was their biggest signing, that Tyler Adams is going to be a starter in this Bournemouth side, which does, that does concern me. Yeah,
I think in terms of what we're doing right now, has to be the lowest grade, because he's hardly played, and it's not really a slight on him as a player, because I actually disagree with what you're saying. I think he's the kind of player that could easily usurp Lewis Cook, and Ryan Christie could go back into his native position, and easily Adams has got the ability to bolster the not only kind of fill in for them or kind of take their spots, but to elevate the side. I think it's a bit unfortunate, because you said, like, Bournemouth have gone under the kind of, everyone's kind of understanding the tactics now, and they're kind of getting to grips with what Iraola wants to do. And it's a bit of a shame that Tyler Adams isn't a part of that, because, as you said, we were quite excited. It's going to be the case for a lot of these where we were quite excited about the move. But I could have easily seen Adams, in either with Lewis Cook or usurping him, playing very well in this side. So, I think it's just one of the cases we've got to kind of say it's unfortunate. It's not really a slight on him, but it has to be the lowest grade, because he hasn't played 20 minutes.
Do we go really harsh and give him a U just because we haven't even seen him?
Well, if I remember right, and it was a while ago, I think U is when you don't do it. So it's unmarked. So
unmarked.
If anything, that's nicer than an E, because it's not based on his performance.
We're not based on performance. But I think U. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure, man. I do worry a little bit about Tyler Adams. I do worry a little bit about him getting back into that side. Although he clearly has the skill level to do so. It's just you never know after a long-term injury what player's going to come back. I mean, I assume a good player's going to come back, but it's just, between March and May, like, how much time does he have really to impress Iraola? It's hard, or how much time does he have to make an impression? I feel like we'll get to see that hopefully next season. Okay, on to the next one. Brentford, Nathan Collins, £23 million from Wolves. Managed to get him for a fee not much more than what Wolves paid Burnley for him a year before that. Still only 22 years old. What have you made about of Nathan Collins at Brentford?
It's difficult, because Brentford aren't having the best of times right now. I think their season hasn't really gone great, but it's not Nathan Collins' exact fault. No. I think he's been okay. It's one of them ones where it's like it's a big fee for a club like Brentford. He's young. There's a lot there's a lot that clubs have seen. That makes it, he's had two big moves in the last few years under the age of 22. It's obvious that
it's quite a lot for a young defender to go
exactly.
through 3 different Premier League clubs.
But yeah, it's more the fact that Brentford aren't really shining as they have been. We all know how good they can be, and I think you could argue that say they've been quite unlucky because
especially with injuries.
Yeah, the performances are great in a lot of games that they've lost or drawn, and as you said, injuries. But in terms of his performances, you can't really knock what he's done. He hasn't lit up the world, but he hasn't been poor. I mean, the fee you could easily say it's quite a big fee for someone who's not fully proven yet, but he's had a few good.
Again, record signing for the club as well.
But Brentford in a period now where they have to look forward into the Premier League. They've got to climb, and I think they've got their ambition should be the kind of Conference League spots or fighting for I don't want to say lesser because it sounds like I'm insulting, but lesser European competition. Yeah. And he's the kind of signings and at the right price that they should be making, because 23 million in this day and age isn't crazy for a 22-year-old who has Premier League experience, different tactics, different clubs, and he's performed okay. So I can't really give it a high grade, can't really give it a low grade. So I think kind of a healthy B.
I think I think a B or a B plus, to be honest. I think this signing's been great. Like, I think the Nathan Collins signing is another example of great business from Brentford. He's been used a ton by Thomas Frank. Yeah. He's been really solid in that back three alongside. Ben Mee hasn't played as many minutes. He's been injured a bit this season. So alongside Ethan Pinnock, who I think is one of the most, I say underrated defenders in the Premier League. I think for the last year we've been saying he's lots of people have said how underrated he is. He's probably kind of fairly rated at this point, Ethan Pinnock, because he does tend to get the credit that he deserves. But I mean, we just look at the stats a little bit. Like he's got a 68% win rate, aerial win rate in the Premier League, which is really, really impressive. That's up from 54% last year. His progressive passes are a career high as well, and obviously he hasn't had that big a career yet. He's only 22 and was playing for Sean Dyche Burnley side and a dysfunctional Wolves side last year, or at least a very defensive Wolves side last year, not the Wolves not the Wolves that we're seeing under Gary O'Neill. And yes, Brentford have been in stinking form. They've lost 12 of their last 15 games. But he did score the winner against West Ham. Headed the winner against West Ham back in November before they went on this run. And I mean, he's I think he's 6'3", Nathan. Or no, he's 1m93. Does that translate 6'3"? Yeah, probably like 6'4" actually. Nathan Collins, he just really fits the profile of what Brentford are about in terms of their they are so they are great at defending set pieces. Like Ethan Pinnock is an absolute beast in the air, as is Ben Mee, and Nathan Collins fits that, and he's decent on the ball, and he's only 22, and he's got a big career ahead of him. I think this was an excellent piece of business from Brentford, and it's one of those ones where it's like Brentford, their season has been poor due to a number of circumstances, but they're not going to get relegated. And I think without Nathan Collins, they would be in a worse position than they are at the moment. So I'd give it a high B. I think
when you put into context, we're not just rating their seasons. We're looking at the actual deal itself. I kind of have to agree, because I think I was going just on this season and how everything's been. But when you look to the future, as you said, 22 years old, has every physical attribute. Tactically, he's versatile in terms of played under 3 different managers and hasn't really, made himself look a fool. I'm happy with a high B.
B+.
I think I was maybe being a little bit mean by just saying B, but when you look into the future, 22 years old and where Brentford want to be, he's exactly the right kind of signing.
Yeah. All right, sweet. Okay, on to the next one. Another high one, I imagine. Brighton, João Pedro. What have you made of him?
Yeah, I think it's been a great move. A player that we've spoken about for a long time. Kind of stuck at Watford. There was a few players who've been stuck at Watford, and would like to see more of.
Ismail Assar being one of them. It took a long time to get his move out of there, didn't he?
But it's been good. I mean, the fact that people aren't talking about Evan Ferguson in the way we were the last few years, I think is testament to the way he's played. Although Ferguson's got more minutes than him, I just think there's like, I'm trying not to discredit Ferguson here, but the performances of João Pedro and the goals have put him over, have at least dampened the conversation of the kind of, Evan Ferguson's an extra £100 million player. Like, I haven't really heard many people go on in the same way last season. So it's been a great, he's hit the ground running. His European record's great. £30 million for a player of his age and kind of profile, brilliant. I think this has to be a very, very high mark, in my opinion, because not only do have Brighton made a sensible signing, a good signing at a sensible price, but there's an extremely long road ahead of him. And I just think if Brighton, we all know Brighton's kind of talent eye is incredible, and the fact that they've now got an asset where they could sell Evan Ferguson for 100 million and not even bat an eyelid. It just says so much about how he's performed. I think it's been a phenomenal transfer in terms of the business side and the football side. I would like more from him. I know it's a bit, I've just given all this praise, but
19 goals this season.
No, but a lot of them are penalties. And for me, he's a player that could light up the Premier League. He could be the talking point of the Premier League. He's got that ability, or he's got that ceiling, I feel anyway. So when I say that, it's more of an encouragement thing than a discrediting thing. He's just, the pace, the finishing, the composure. Obviously, trying to bash him for the penalties, but I think you were telling me earlier, every single penalty he scored. So it's like the composure for a youngish lad, to do that is we put like Ivan Toney, we say, best Premier League, we give them that as an accolade, but we take it away for some players like Lacazette. Just penalties. So you've got to take that into consideration, that there is a good thing to be scoring penalties. And for me, on the field, he's got everything there, and I just want to see more of it. I think that's a better way of putting it. I would love him to just have the freedom just to... Can he play on the left? Because Mitoma's injury really, can usher in him to play on the left, and maybe we'll see a different side of him. But I think it's a great signing all around there.
I guess it's one of those things with Brighton, is that actually, despite the players that they've sold for big money over the last few years, that there's rarely been kind of one star in that team, has there? And especially like centre forwards, like even Evan Ferguson, his game time has been somewhat limited. We're yet to see him like truly hit consistent scoring form, but with João Pedro, I think for £30 million, I think is absolutely sensational, and is feasibly a player who could cost a Champions League club 70 million in the next year or two. But as it is, like you say, James, it's not just the scoring. Like, his all-round ability is brilliant, and actually for him to make that step up from the Championship to the Premier League at this point, it does feel like actually timing-wise, Brighton bought him at the exact right moment. Yeah, very, very true. A year earlier, he might not have been quite experienced enough. A year later, we may have seen them face more competition for his signature. I think they got the deal done in about May of last year. So again, great planning for Brighton in a year as well where their recruitment otherwise has not been quite as good, and we've seen someone like Pascal Gross kind of become the star creator in the team again, and really, finally, I say get the credit he deserves. Like, people have been talking about he's so underrated. It's like, I don't know, Pascal Gross in the first couple of years was kind of credited as being the guy who was keeping Brighton in the Premier League, but only after selling players like Caicedo for huge money, and Gross staying and kind of performing that brilliant creative role again. He's kind of getting that credit again, I guess. But I digress. João Pedro, I'm very willing to just give him a very solid A. Yeah,
I think in terms of...
give him an A+, but I'm going to go for an A. Not quite Declan Rice levels.
You're looking... I think Declan Rice kind of has to be, unless I'm missing someone, has to be in a category of his own. But in terms of the business side, like... not only is it a good fee, he's a sellable asset potentially, and he could, as we said, if Evan Ferguson moves on, just fill him for that at a reasonable price. A, very happy with an A.
Sweet, cool. A for João Pedro. Okay, let's move on to Burnley very quickly. Zeki Amdouni signed from Basel last summer, £15 million. To be fair, I mean, Company had used him a lot. He has used him a lot. 25 Prem starts, but just 4 goals, around the same XG. Bit of a victim of Burnley's, attacking ineptitude this season. Looks like they're going down. Also, I mean, he got 12 goals in each of his last 2 seasons in the Swiss Super League for Basel and Lausanne. So there is pedigree there, but he is young, and basically Burnley are banking on him at this point, performing in the Championship, or being able to bank on him. The fact that they loaned David Datro to Fofana in January, is I think a bit of a sign, and he's got 2 goals already. They're 11 points from safety now. Yeah, I think it was a difficult one with Burnley in general in terms of their business in the summer.
Yeah.
Because they were their stars last season, the likes of Maatsen, the likes of Teller, the likes of Harwood Bellis, like all loan players. And we've spoken about that a lot on this channel, but again, I think someone like Amdouni, a little bit of a symptom of them just being a bit overconfident with just signing so many young players and players who don't have Premier League experience. They just went a little bit too hard on that. £15 million is not a bad fee for a striker, and if he can, having said that, I think, I'm going to give this one a D.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because, as you said, Burnley are not in a great place, and it's when everyone's kind of not playing well, it's hard to really gauge what a player's like. But the fact, as you said, Fofana's come in and already kind of shown more than he has throughout the season in a lot less games is a worrying sign. If they signed him on the premise of, and this is me being completely speculative, if they signed him on the premise of, we'll try our hand at the Premier League, if it doesn't work, we've got him for next season, and which may be the case.
Vincent Kompany stood in the job for a reason.
Exactly.
Right?
And they could go back down and then build from there and potentially have a great Championship season to then build him into the Premier League season. That makes sense, but I can't say that as I say, it's hypothetical. At the moment, it's been bad. Fofana, as we said, to come in, done better. Already, it's got to be a low score. But it's not to say that there isn't potential there. There isn't a way to flip this into a good transfer. It's just at this point in time, in the situation they're in, for the money that they paid for a player who could be playing European football, in every area, it's not gone great. So it's.
He is a Swiss international. To be fair, will be appearing at the Euros this summer. Has actually scored more in Euro qualifying in less minutes than he has in the Premier League, albeit against much lesser sides. But
that might be a sign to say it is a problem of Burnley as a whole rather than him as a player. But we have to rate this on how it's impacted Burnley, and it pretty much hasn't scratched the surface of a good signing.
It's not necessarily the player's fault, but if a club signs a player, Burnley just haven't had enough separate scorers this season, or had enough goals coming from elsewhere in the side for them not to have needed a centre forward to perform this season, and they didn't sign a centre forward who was able to do it on their own. I mean, look at someone like Chris Wood this season, at former Burnley player at Nottingham Forest, who has he's found a kind of second win in the Premier League. I know Burnley don't necessarily play the football that's suited to Chris Wood these days, but I guess it's food for thought in that. You do. If you want to stay up, you do. Well,
that's what I'm guessing they tried to do with Fofana, just to see if they could help themselves within this season, which says to me that Zeki will be next season's kind of first choice thought of but it's obviously not worked in the Premier League this season, so we really can't give it a great score. Yeah,
let's move on to Chelsea then. This will. I mean, is there going to be debate over this? Moises Caicedo, £115 million, British record transfer fee. I would be willing to be kinder on this if there was a sign. I say if there was a sign, like Chelsea did perform pretty admirably in the Carabao Cup final. They're into the FA Cup quarter-finals as well. There are signs that Chelsea are not going to be as disastrous as we've seen them in the past in the future. But having said that, you just don't know, because generally speaking, the Burley era at Chelsea has been a disaster on the pitch, and
I think more so off the pitch. I think the off the pitch has been such a disaster that it's affected the on the pitch, if that makes sense.
For sure. And it's just hard to know. I mean, Pochettino doesn't. I don't think Pochettino will lose his job before the end of the season, but you never know what could happen in the summer if they do end the season. If they do go out, say, in the FA Cup quarterfinals, if they do fail to finish in the top half or fail to finish in the top 8, and they've spent £115 million on a player who has not been one of their consistent performers this season. You look at that Chelsea midfield, and even someone like Enzo, I think, has shone more in some games than Caicedo has. Defensively, they have struggled, and Caicedo is meant to perform that role in front of the back line. We have seen him in a number of games look exposed, and maybe that's the structure around him. But having said that, you have someone like Conor Gallagher, who has been one of Chelsea's best players this season, who, going forward and in terms of his work rate off the ball, is excellent. So I think, so far it's hard to say that Caicedo's not been a disappointment at that price point as well. Long term for Chelsea, what that means for PSR, what that means for FFP, it just doesn't feel like money well spent in any regard, really. Like I'm struggling at the moment to see the positives in this. Like if you and it's not like, like Liverpool were willing to pay that much for him last summer. And had he gone to Liverpool, I can almost guarantee that he would have been a success.
Yes.
Like if you look at like what Klopp has done with McAllister and Endo, who are far, are not as specialists in that. Well, I say that Endo was a bit of a tackle monster at points at Stuttgart,
really good at Stuttgart.
But both of them are much more all-round midfielders than Caicedo, at least the role that Caicedo was brought in for. And yet, for less than half the money, both of those players have performed better in defensive midfield in a midfield that is in transition at Liverpool than Caicedo has at Chelsea. And Pochettino's obviously had a hard job. We've spoken about that a lot. It's a that whole team is very new. But even when you compare his performances to other signings that Chelsea have made in the last year, obviously Cole Palmer comes to mind, but even Nicholas Jackson, even Malo Gusto, he has not been one of their better performers of their signings. Petrovic, I guess, falls onto that as well. He's been excellent coming in, and he is by far the most expensive. It's and the fact that the fee that they paid for him is a symptom of that Enzo Fernandez fee as well. I can't see this being in any way a decent score. I'm sorry, like Caicedo may well go has the ability to be one of the best defensive midfielders in world football, but I'm yet to see consistent evidence that Chelsea are going to turn this around in the next year or two, and by extension, it's hard to see Caicedo being anywhere near worth that money in the next year or two. I can't see it at the moment.
It's very hard to be a successful Chelsea signing in this current state.
And it's not even like Chelsea have looked quite good in the last few weeks, but there's nothing to say that will suddenly dry up.
There's good performances,
or Pochettino will be out of the door next season at some point, and they'll have to start again. Like, you don't know.
For every kind of, I hate the phrase, but it's kind of one step forward, two steps back with Chelsea. Like, they hit a bit of good form, like get a draw against City, like great performances. They do well in the Carabao Cup, but then they lose it. So it's like, it doesn't matter if they play well because they've lost. But in terms of this,
because the noise outside the club could well affect the team in the next few weeks.
I cannot imagine what it's like to be a Chelsea player right now. There are certain people who thrive under this stuff. Conor Gallagher is definitely one of those people.
He got that winner against Leeds midweek.
But there are some people, and I'm definitely in this category, get put under pressure and you just absolutely crumble. I'm not saying Caicedo is that. I'm just saying there is so much pressure on Chelsea at the moment that it's like, you play your best football when you're happy and you're confident, and it's probably hard to get that confidence. But if we're taking this transfer alone, there are so many elements to it that makes it a bad transfer. You've mentioned most of them there, but there's one I want to kind of point out in the fact that they also signed Romeo Lavia, up and coming, great player who could have gone to Liverpool similarly and made a massive mistake in not going. And he is Caicedo's taking the place of Lavia. I'm not saying Lavia is a better player than Caicedo, but Caicedo hasn't put in the performances, and then Lavia's still lingering in the bench. It's just like, it's a mess, and it's.
Well, I mean, Lavia's injuries have contributed to that as well, right?
Yes, but he it's the fact that, like, even so, I don't think he's getting an overconsidered because they can't drop him because they paid 115 million pounds.
This is part of the problem, isn't it?
And
it's that they him and Enzo as a partnership they've had to kind of rely on it. It's a little bit like Anthony's situation at Man United last season, whereby, especially because he was, it's a different situation because he was Ten Hag's man, very much so. But like, when you spend that much, you have to justify that by playing them, even when they're not in form. So I'm going to go for another D on this.
Yeah, I think D- just because it's Chelsea and they need to just be like just calmer with everything they do.
Yeah, and the financial ramifications in the long term.
Yes, very true. Yeah, they're going to be paying. I think I've forgotten the guy's name. There's a brilliant video out there about Chelsea's financial situation from 2004 to now. I can't remember his name. If you can remember his name, I'm going to put some clues out there. If you could put in the comments his name. He used to do kind of Football Manager stuff, but he's done a few deep dives. And he found the chart of how much they'll be paying, and they're still going to be paying hundreds of millions of pounds per season, per window in like 2029 because of what they're doing now. And it's like, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens in the
Unprecedented,
future.
Certainly. Right, we've actually spent quite a lot of time on these, so let's rattle through a few now. Let's do some quick fires here, actually. Crystal Palace, Adam Wharton, only came in January. I think it's hard to judge, but actually he's been very good so far.
Yeah.
Obviously, new manager, Oliver Glasner, kicked off with that 3-0 win over Burnley. Adam Wharton was great in the Championship at Blackburn, playing a more defensive role in a more defensive side now, but he's averaging nearly 6 tackles and interceptions so far. Just turned 20. Big fee out of the Championship, but looks like a good long-term signing. Is he what Palace were needing right now? Maybe not, but I think it's a pretty good signing.
Yeah, I think Palace's eye for talent has been really good over the last few seasons. There's not really much to go on in terms of him in the Premier League, but it seems a very sensible signing. Good fee. A very young player, which is always good for the future. Someone who's shone in a different league, especially Championship. When you're young and you shine in the Championship, it's always a really good sign. Coming into the Premier League, but as you said, there's not much to go off in terms of him at Crystal Palace. But it seems like a very good signing. It seems like a sensible signing, one for the future and now, especially in this transitional period. So.
And should add some. I'm going to say C.
C. Yeah.
Just
it's
because
the unknown kind of.
Just because we haven't seen enough. I think by the end of the season it could be a B.
Okay, that's fine.
But especially with Cheikh Doucouré being out for for so long, he has added a bit of solidity in there. But I'm going to say C. I think. I feel like B. You've got to have a bit more.
True.
A bit more time.
Success,
On to another negative one. I would say Beto, £26 million to Everton.
It's got to be really low.
I mean, Dominic Calvert-Lewin's keeping him out of the side, even though Dominic Calvert-Lewin hasn't scored since October, which that kind of took me by surprise a little bit. I just assumed he had scored, since then. But the goals kind of coming elsewhere, particularly from Doucouré in that Everton team this season. They've obviously been a bit up and down. Good news, obviously, that the points deduction was reduced. But again, I think Beto, £26 million, not crazy for a striker, but especially one who scored, hit double figures 2 seasons running in Serie A. But what is Beto's long-term future? Like he's not making the side. He's got 1 goal this season.
Yeah,
and took him long enough to score as well.
It's quite a big fee for a club that are being hit with financial issues at the moment. Every signing has to be spot on in the situation. They've fought relegation for 3 seasons now. The fact that Dominic Calvert-Lewin, as much as I really like him as a player and a person, his output hasn't been great, and he's ahead of him. It's got to be kind of like a low C, high D, I think.
I think D again.
Yeah.
D, maybe even E, given Everton's problems.
E for Everton.
Let's go E for Everton, Let us know if you think that's harsh, but I just think, that kind of money being spent by Everton on a player who's not even making the first team is not good. Mikalenko and Brentford both outscored him this season. Fulham, Alex Iwobi.
Yes.
Deadline day signing from Everton, 4 goals, which is only 2 off the amount he managed in 4 years at Everton. Obviously scored a great winner against Man United last weekend in stoppage time.
I think Iwobi's a good player. Just a player that's always going to have a Premier League career. I don't think he's going to, take the world by storm. I don't think he's ever going to be bad. He's consistently good. and for Fulham, who are on the up, I think it's just it's fine. Like, this is kind of like if we're going kind of the median is C, I think it has to be C. He's helped them, maybe a high C, and maybe being a bit harsh.
Because I was considering a B actually, but I think I'll happily. Yeah, I think I could be swayed to a high C.
Yeah, because he's not one of the standouts, but he's been a consistent, good performer, and that's all I can really say about him this season.
Yeah.
And Fulham are doing well, so
they're punching above their weight once again, aren't they? In terms of like expected points, expected goals and stuff, they're again ranking pretty low, almost relegation level. But I think
more Marco Silva than anything. But I like him. I really like him as a player. I think the fee's fine. I think he's been fine. So I think a kind of middle of the road C.
Yeah, I mean, given that Everton got rid of him for £22 million, then spent £26 million on Beto, like Fulham have definitely done better out of there.
Very true.
I think you could, I think he has been one of Fulham's best players this season, but I think, keeping Palhinha was very much the key there. Yeah. And, that deadline, getting Iwobi in on deadline day and keeping Palhinha was really crucial to Fulham, staying out of relegation trouble this season. Joint third top scorer in the league. Also, I think props to him for coming back from that AFCON disappointment and performing instantly in the Prem.
On him was completely unfair as well.
Yeah, so I think I think okay, let's go C+. Let's go C+. Okay. He has been very impressive in spells for Fulham.
Yeah.
Okay, next one, Liverpool, Dominik Szoboszlai. I think this is an interesting one actually, because obviously a big fee for a player with world-class potential, I think, but the output just hasn't, he was really, really impressive in those first few months and has been very impressive in spells since then, but been injured the last, for a lot of this calendar year. 3 goals and 2 assists in 20 starts for him. Yeah, what do you think with Szoboszlai? This was one I already struggled with actually thinking about before.
There's a few factors to it. There's the now and the future. I think he's a player who's shown so much at such a young age that Liverpool just getting him makes him a good signing, because he's a player that if you left in Germany, that he'd the fee would go up. So 60 million for a player of his kind of stature in terms of world football. His age, I think, sensible, but this season it's been okay. Could have gone better, but could have been a lot worse. I do think this is a good signing. I think this kind of lingers in the B- because yes, he's having a good season. I don't think he's having a bad season, but this is 100% a signing for the future as well. And the fact that he can perform now is just an added bonus to that. It's difficult because as you said, it's like he hasn't been performing, but there's so much potential, and we haven't quite seen it yet. But I think I want to say a B-, maybe a B, because
I was actually thinking B+ just because of when he has been good. Yeah. It's like, okay, this guy could be one of the best players in the league,
and we know that he's gonna get better in this Liverpool side. So we know there's more to come. So I'm happy with it,
especially in terms of Klopp's succession plan. I was going to go for B+. So shall we compromise on just a straight B?
No, I'm happy with the B+.
B+.
I don't want to be, because I really like him and I think he's a great player. I think we'll see more from him, and the fees in this day and age, okay. Yeah. But if we're talking fees, Luton.
Yeah, Luton for Ryan Giles.
Jesus, yeah.
5 million for Ryan Giles, now on loan at Hull City. It was always going to be hard for Ryan Giles. I mean, 20 championship assists across the last 2 seasons on loan from Wolves to Cardiff and Middlesbrough then. Went to Middlesbrough last season. Just a weird signing from Luton, I think, given that Alfie Doty was obviously brilliant in the Championship last term. They spent the most money on a player who was brilliant in the Championship last term, but it was vying for one of their stronger positions. And I guess strength in numbers, depth, etc. I guess they perhaps thought that if Doty gets an injury, then at least they've got top quality backup. Yeah. But struggled to make his mark. It's back on loan in the Championship.
Yeah. It's not good as an individual signing, but
as an investment, maybe all right.
Yeah, as an investment. But when it comes to Luton paying 5 million for a player that one of their better players is taking the position of, you can't, it's unfortunate, but Doherty's been, is it Doherty or Doherty?
I say Doherty, but
Doherty, whichever one it is, he's been incredible this season. Genuinely one of the players who strikes fear when it comes to Luton, because his crossing ability is just second to none, really. I think he's got a great career ahead. I don't know how old he is, but he's definitely got a big move coming in. And for me, when I see that his replacement is only 5 million, I can see Doherty leaving for a much bigger fee than 5 million, and then him stepping in. So it's a sensible signing for the club, but for the player and the situation it is right now, it's not great. So maybe it's kind of like a C.
Yeah, let's go C.
Because there's potential there, potential for money to be made for the club, but right now it's not looking great.
Yeah, cool. Let's go for C on that. So yeah, B plus for Szoboszlai, C for Ryan Giles. Okay, Man City, obviously Man City fan James Wayne. Josko Gvardiol at £78 million. Yeah. He's obviously been injured the last few weeks, but could be back for today's Manchester derby. Whether he'll actually get into the side is another matter. Obviously left Leipzig along with Szoboszlai last summer, part of that talent drain out of the Bundesliga club. What have you made of him? Because obviously City defensively not as impressive this year as last year, but is that, can you just put that down to him? Obviously it's a big fee though.
In terms of, if you're looking at the individual transfer right now, it's not great. I think he's been good when he's played for us, but £78 million, you want better than good. But we know how young he is, we know his ceiling. Nathan Ake is in the form of his life. I think he's become an absolute staple of that Man City defence, especially on the left. So
this is what I mean. Like last season, Nathan Ake really stood out for his performances at left back and at left centre back. Gvardiol has taken most of those minutes. Obviously, we've seen Ake in a back two a lot more this year.
Yeah.
But do you think City have suffered for not having Ake?
I wouldn't say we've suffered. What we've suffered, the defensive issues come from me. What I think anyway is the chopping and changing of the back four in terms of the person, because most of them can play multiple positions in that defensive line, and some of them can even push further forward. Gvardiol being one of them, and we've seen the chopping and changing and Pep trying to figure out his system, and he did it last season. It was just chop and changing until you find the thing that will make it click. Going into the kind of the latter stages of the season, I think we're seeing it this time. So a lot of Gvardiol before his injury, but as I said, he was okay. And for me, Nathan Ake, if I was to say everyone fit, who's your back four, Gvardiol doesn't actually get in there. So it's definitely one for the future, because if we didn't nail him now, somebody else would. Yeah. And he's exactly the right profile for Man City. So it's a good transfer for the future. But it's been okay for now, so I want to kind of say like a low B, like a B minus. I think it's fair because the performances have been okay. The fee knocks it down because it is a very high fee, but then there's so much potential for the future, and it works for City, who are a club actually selling well now. So signing a player for 78 million isn't that kind of crazy, because they've sold 50 million of youth talent in the same season. So yeah, I think a low B is fair, but I think he'll have an incredible City career.
Yeah, I was going to say C.
Yeah, I think that's
just because I think City. Yeah, it's difficult. I just think City have looked really vulnerable. And to be fair, like this is without him in the side. So maybe I'm being a bit harsh there.
I don't know the stats. I should have really looked into this before, because I should know it, because it's the thing I complain about all the time.
I mean, City are conceding more per game than they were last season. They conceded more XG than they were last season.
I would really like to see how many consecutive back fours, the same back four we've had in the season, because I can't imagine it's been more than 1 or 2 games of consistent back fours. But that's where I think we really falter, and that, the way we play, you need consistency, because you're going to need to know when because most of the time you're running back to goal when you're defending for City. You're kind of chasing in it. Everything's like a panic. It's usually a 2v1 or a 2v2. And so to kind of be out of form or be in rotation and have to do something like that all of a sudden, your concentration needs to be there. So game time is extremely important. So chopping and changing the back four, I think, has been the main flaw of everyone in that back four.
I do think in some ways though with City, it's like, sure, Gvardiol, great signing for the long term, but like when someone like Rafa Guerreiro was on the market for free in the summer, goes to Bayern Munich, like, could City have not made a play for him? Someone who, very much more in the kind of almost kind of Cancelo, a ball-playing left-back who has amazing, can play in midfield as well. It just felt like the perfect opportunity to I think Guerrero would have been an amazing signing.
I agree,
with
but
someone
I think
like that, I think City would have struggled less structurally in that sense.
Potentially, but I think
especially with Stones being in and out of the side this year.
I think the club know where they're at in terms of personnel. I think they're comfortable. And I think Gvardiol's a bit of a luxury signing for the future.
Yeah.
In the kind of, if we get him now, then we've got him. We don't have to worry about somebody else pinching him. So for this season, I can't really give it a great grade, but I know for
it's kind of short term versus long term,
exactly.
Isn't it?
So what did you say? C?
I went for a C.
I'll say high C, a C plus.
Okay, well, let's go for a C plus. Let's compromise on that. Next one, Man United, Rasmus Højlund. Again, difficult one here because I think.
Yeah. I think it's I'd say quite similar to Gvardiol.
Yeah.
But I think he's been a bit more impressive as of late. Obviously, it's a very hard transition.
I think the difference is, obviously you can't really compare City and United's priorities because City are now a team who expect to win the league every year and expect to reach the Champions League semi-finals every year. Man United are rebuilding still, and who knows, may even have a different manager in charge in the summer. Like there's no guarantees over Erik ten Hag's future. What I like about the Rasmus Højlund deal is that this is someone who, at least in the last month, has shown that he could be the star of the team in the future. 7 goals in 6 Premier League games for a side which up until January were one of the most dysfunctional attacking teams in the whole league. I mean, dysfunctional defensive teams as well. Like some of United's form this season has been lower mid-table form, if not 14th, 15th in the league kind of form. Like United have been seriously bad at points, and Højlund was not getting anywhere near enough service. And now without him in the team, United look pretty hapless again. And I do worry for them massively in the Manchester derby. I know they were a little bit better against Nottingham Forest midweek, but still, without Højlund in that attack, your Garnacho not playing on the right, Rashford having to play through the centre. It's just the balance just isn't there, and Højlund has now very quickly become like really central to that attack. And I guess another thing in his favour, or another thing that I think kind of bumps him up a little bit, is that when he joined the club, he wasn't fully fit, so that hampered the first half of his season a little bit as well. Having said that, 0.4 non-penalty XG per 90 it's all right, but it's not amazing. Mo Salah, for example, is at 0.5, but then you look at someone like Elijah Adebayo's ahead of that in a Luton side which is very much counter-attacking. Chris Wood is on 0.55 in a fairly unimpressive Nottingham Forest side. Yes, he's very young. He's only just turned 21. But like Casemiro, McTominay, Rashford, Anthony, Garnacho and Bruno are all out shooting him. He's not even averaging two shots a game, which isn't great. Again, I think is a symptom of United's attack in general not being very functional. But I do think, although he's still a star for the future and his scoring form has been great, and he's had an amazing last month, it just still is a very big fee. And given that United may not be able to spend a fee like that on anyone this summer again, given that there is still a lot of rebuilding to do, especially in the midfield, if Lissandro's injury problems continue, then they will probably have to spend big again at centre back. I don't know if I can give it more than a C.
I think
at this moment in time, I think with like we say with the Gvardiol thing, I think Højlund's been more important to United, especially than Gvardiol has been to City. And without Højlund, without signing someone like Højlund, who knows where United's attack this year? He has been really important, but
I was going to say that
it's a difficult one.
He
still did take a long time to get going.
He has to be higher than Gvardiol in my eyes, because it's in a similar position where it's like a young player. Man United were like, if we don't get him now, somebody else is going to get him.
Although there were more options out there, like they could have feasibly gone for someone else.
But he was last season being talked about in the same way as kind of I forgot his name now. The bloke who went to Juventus, Serbian Vlahovic, in terms of like explosive season, and then gets his big move.
And to be fair, I prefer that. I'm more happy that United.
That they make progressive
I actually loved I was calling for the Højlund signing quite early, just because I loved the idea of I love the idea of
Signing
someone
the
who's a
next
little bit
one.
unknown.
Yeah.
You know, someone who's a little bit
But
unknown
the
and has who has that raw ability, because his raw ability is brilliant, and he's shown that in the last
But
month.
I think you have to put into consideration the future and the fact that right now he is putting Man United, the responsibility of Man United the striker position on his shoulders, and he's up to the challenge. He's come through a lot of trolling. As I keep going under pressure, he's come through a lot.
And he seems really mature as well for his age.
So
He's played in multiple countries already. What's his 4th different countries he's played in already?
It has to be higher than Gvardiol, because I think the future for him at United is brighter than Gvardiol at City. I'm taking individually anyway.
Let's go B minus.
I think B minus. Yeah,
let's go B minus. Okay, let's rattle through the rest. Newcastle, Sandro Tonali.
It's unfortunate.
I think it has to be a D or an E, doesn't it?
Yeah, because
again, unfortunate.
The player himself, incredible, but if you're not there, then
yeah. Also, the flagship signing, a signing that means that Newcastle were,
and they're in financial trouble.
Yeah,
so it does look bad.
I mean, in terms of PSR, so it meant that Newcastle weren't able to strengthen. Newcastle could feasibly finish in the bottom half this season as a result of a signing that they didn't know what was going to happen, but still, in hindsight, a mistake.
Yeah.
Let's go for a D on that one.
I'll say D minus.
D minus. Let's go for a D minus. Nottingham Forest, Ibrahim Songare again. £30 million, a big fee for Forest. They're still signing a lot of players. Again, Forest in could be facing a points deduction this season as well. Ibrahim Songare, 18th in the squad for minutes. And I know Orel Mangala has now left for Lyon on loan, so he'll probably get more minutes once he's back from injury. But there's still no definitive return date. He was obviously away at AFCON, came back with an injury. I can't say this is any. I think again a D. I don't think this has been a good signing at all.
Take into consideration Nottingham Forest, the players that are rightfully playing ahead of him, the fee they paid for him, and the fact that they should be careful with their spending. It's, I don't want to say pointless because that sounds very unfair, but it's just not done any. Like 30 million, you expect at least a player. Yeah. And he's hardly played, so I'm very much on a similar level to you.
Yeah, and I think Forest fans in general have not been so much impressed with him. I think Dominguez, Orel Mangala, I know he's gone now. He was their best midfielder. Danilo as well. I think they all impressed more than him.
It's just
have made more
Forest
of an impact.
kind of being Nottingham Forest for this one.
So okay, D for that. Sheffield United, I'm willing to be a bit more kind on this actually with Cameron Archer, more so than with Zeki at Burnley, just because Cameron Archer does have pedigree in the Championship, having got those 11 goals and 6 assists for Borough on loan from Villa last year. £18 million, 4 goals from 1,500 minutes. Again, not great, but at least they've got someone who I think can perform for them in the Championship next year.
Yeah.
I think from Cameron Archer's perspective, not a good career move. I think I think he could have made a more progressive move than going to Sheffield United. Out of Villa as well, I don't think it's a bad fee. I don't think it's a bad fee though. I'm willing to say C for this one.
Yeah, I'll probably knock it down a little bit because Villa right now is not where you want to be, but for him leaving Villa, it's a very bad time to leave Villa because you don't really know what Emery could have done with you. And the kind of vibe, let's say, of the ambitions of Villa are up, where Sheffield United, okay, let's look for next season down. So I'll probably knock it down to a C minus, just because I feel like now is not the time to leave Aston Villa for Sheffield United.
Cool. C minus for Cameron Archer at Sheffield United. Spurs, Brennan Johnson.
Yeah, interesting one. This
big
one.
fee.
Yeah,
but in some way,
I think no.
I like. His numbers have been great.
Yeah.
Like his underlying numbers have been brilliant.
A big player for Nottingham Forest last season. I think him and Gibbs White really kind of took that whole team by the scruff of the neck and forced it down the throat of a lot of big teams. And I think he was extremely impressive. I think it's a bit unfortunate. Spurs, I know they've had a lot of injuries, him being one of them, but he seems to be in the rotation, which for somebody who is kind of leading a Premier League team, or at least being one of 2 or 3 stars in a Premier League team, to going to a better Premier League team, but a rotation player, not just a starting 11. He is rotation. For that fee does knock it down a bit, but I have no shadow of a doubt that he is a great player and we'll get good things out of him. It's already looked good, and I can imagine it looks good in the future. So that kind of bumps it back up a bit. I think this is a good middle of the road signing where he's performed well. It's the fees a little bit high, but I completely understand it, and I understand the reasons behind his move, Spurs' move, and the performances are there. So I have to kind of give it maybe a C+, B-.
So should we go B-? I think
B- is fair.
I think with Brennan Johnson, he's still not an unknown quantity. It's just his end product still isn't consistent enough.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's still very young, and also like expected goals and assists per 90 is at the same level as Jota and Julian Alvarez.
There we go.
His shots are up massively. His chance creation's up massively. His defensive work is up massively under Ange. Like
you can see it will work, and it has worked.
And he could end up being a pretty special talent. I mean, I think also with Spurs, it's like the fact that Maddison, Van der Ven, and Porro all cost less than him.
Yeah.
As I guess did a doggy, although that was the season before when they actually paid, or when they struck that deal. If those players hadn't been such big successes, then you'd look at Brennan Johnson and you'd be like, oh, have they made a mistake here? Because they spent the biggest signing of the summer. The other ones haven't worked out, but all of those have worked out massively.
Yeah, I think.
And so Brennan Johnson has had a bit of a chance to breathe, and Spurs' business, finally, actually, their summer business was pretty much all hits. Like, we're not even talking about Vicario that they got in for a cut price fee.
Yeah.
The success of the other transfers has meant that, and especially at the price that they paid for them, has meant that they kind of were able to afford taking a punt on Brennan Johnson.
I think it'd be unfair to say that because of Spurs' other good signings that it makes him a worse signing. I just think it's been good. It's been
makes it a good signing. It will make him a better signing.
Yeah, it's a good signing at Spurs at a transitional period. You could have seen a lot of players come in, new manager come in. Things are a bit confusing, but everyone gets the Ange system. Everyone seems to be working well. Spurs as a club seem to be in good spirits. The fans are in good spirits. I think it's been a success. I think B-. I think it's
B-.
fair.
Okay. That might even be a little bit harsh, but let's go with it.
Okay.
B. We're sticking on B-.
Okay.
We're sticking on B-. You said it, James. So West Ham, Mohamed Kudus.
Yeah,
I think it's been great. Well, I say that his actual underlying numbers have really taken a hit.
Yeah.
But his actual, I think the technical ability that he has is invaluable to West Ham.
I actually met him last week for a shoot, and I'm a massive fan of him now.
Yeah.
He's such a nice person as well, and when I watched the next West Ham game, I watched him and kind of had a player focus on him, and he brings something to West Ham. West Ham fans frustrate me a little bit because I understand the expectation of the club. Your expectations are high, but they need to be checked a little bit. West Ham are in a good place. They were a team that were fighting relegation for years, in the Championship previously.
Lost their star player last summer as well.
And they've got themselves into a groove now under Moyes, where it's they got themselves into European competition, won the European competition, sold a player for 100 million, still maintaining good Premier League results, and having successful results in Europe to a degree. And they've got a player now who's young, exciting, can contribute attacking. He's actually been playing out position. He prefers the 10 role, as I found out in the interview.
Yeah. And he is, he has kind of been underrated there as well. He's great in the 10. I mean, as we see for Ghana, he's great in the 10 role.
But he brings that flair and that excitement that that West Ham have had. A few of those players dropped in over the years. The kind of Payet's come to mind, and that's what I want to see. I think it's been a good signing. I think it could have gone better, but I think it's been a good signing. Definitely one for the future. I think West Ham are in a good place because of him as well. So I think I've got to give it a B. I think
I might give it an A.
An A.
I might go for it and give it an A.
He's had a bit of a dip in form.
He has,
but
I just think for the price, it's absolutely sensational.
What is the price again?
£38 million. And I just think, given that he was linked with Arsenal. Yeah, he was linked with. He's a Champions League level player.
Yeah,
and West Ham have a few Champions League level players, namely Lucas Paquetá, and you talk about the 10 position, right? If Paquetá were to leave this summer, which may well could happen, almost went to Man City last summer.
Yeah.
Then if Moyes was to then put Kudus in his preferred 10 position, then you have the ready-made replacement there.
Yeah.
He's obviously not the. He's maybe not as cultured as Paquetá in terms of his passing, but he's certainly a better dribbler. He's a completely different kind of player, but he's an amazing dribbler. Like he's completed more take-ons than anyone else in the Premier League this season, and suddenly he becomes the fulcrum of the side. And I don't know, 6 goals and 2 assists in an inconsistent team this year. Also performed in the Europa League as well,
and it gives him another sellable asset. Yeah, I see what you mean.
I know. In terms of performances this year, not like. Who else have we given an A to? We gave João Pedro an A.
Yeah, okay. If João Pedro is getting an A, then.
Are you happy for me to overrule on this? Because I'm 100%. I'm happy to compromise.
No, because like I've been thinking like, oh, he hasn't hit the ground as spectacularly as we like anticipated, but he's playing good for West Ham. For West Ham, it's a great signing, a sellable asset in the future. Yeah, I mean, I've got.
And he's also had a number. I feel like what's swung it for me is they just have been quite a few like big moments from him, like big magical moments.
Yeah. And he's flary, and like you want to see that. He's the kind of
entertainment factor.
What's that word I'm missing? The kind of the raw, the purest footballer in me enjoys him. So yeah, I'm happy with the name.
Sweet. And finally, I might have to give another A for this. Matheus Cunha at £44 million, which at the time seemed like crazy stuff, and maybe
a few months after as well,
and also because of Wolves' financial situation, maybe we could bring it down because. Lopetegui ends up leaving the club over their financial constraints and not being able to do much in the transfer market, partly because of the Cunha fee. But all's well that ends well. Gary O'Neill has been a sensation there. Good. And Matheus Cunha, I think, it's hard to say because Pedro Neto has been so good as well, and Lamina has been great as well. There have been a number of stars in that Wolves side. Cunha, I think, has been one of the stars of the Premier League this season. 9 goals and 6 assists. He does so much more aside from that as well.
Well, that's the thing. Like he started the season and everyone was criticising him because he was getting himself into these crazy positions and missing all the time. And that's just,
the fact that he's starting off those attacks as well.
Well, it's the fact, I remember the first game. I don't know if it was their first game of the season against Man United. Yeah, it was good. Wolves were crazy. They were everywhere. And Cunha was starting deep and pushing forward. I didn't even know he was the striker until a couple games later when he was actually leading the line. Yeah, I think it was a great signing. And you see that kind of Lopetegui, the financial constraints, Wolves were like, no, we need this player. And it makes complete sense now because, for a player that we started saying, oh, he could do everything but score, but now he's scoring. It's like, how can you bash him? Like he's just been... I don't want to say the guy, but he's one of 3, as you were saying, guys who are kind of spotlighting the kind of transition under Gary O'Neill and the way that Wolves have become quite a... Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
They're just fun to watch, aren't they? And I think Matheus Cunha is so central to that as well. I think without him, without what he brings to the side through the centre, I don't think we see Neto get as much space out wide. We don't see Hwang pick up the kind of positions that he does. Like his output is amazing, but his ability to carry the ball from deep as well, we kind of saw that from him in his Hertha Berlin days when he was playing for a really bad Hertha Berlin side, and his attacking numbers are now at the level, if not more so, than they were there.
Yeah, I don't want this to be a clip, but you see kind of Gabi Jesus, but with output.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Wow. I'm not saying he's at the level of Gabi Jesus yet, but why not? Gabi Jesus hasn't really performed well this season, or not that well under, when he's moved to Arsenal, but you can see the similar qualities in Gabi Jesus as you can in Cunha in terms of the link-up, the fact he can be an unselfish striker, but then he adds goals on top, which is just... It's exactly what you want. You can understand why Wolves paid...
He's certainly got more physicality than Jesus, not necessarily the
and the fact that he's starting things from... I know Jesus can do this, but he usually starts his attacks from wide, and I know he can do it from deep, but the fact that Cunha's doing it from deep rather than wide says a lot about the kind of intelligence of him. And I'm, once again, not trying to bash Jesus. I absolutely love him. I'm just trying to hype up Cunha. But to have that intelligence and to be able to finish now instinctively in your first season, it's just every box is being ticked. And he's just part of this Wolves transition that just looks incredible.
Yeah, I think in terms of importance to a club's progress, I think it's really hard to look past. And I think maybe Wolves just got a bit lucky, to be honest. I think Wolves might have just got a bit lucky, but like nevertheless,
we'll give them the credit.
They got lucky, and you know, I'm going to give it an A. That's all we have time for on Sunday Vibes for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. That's the first time we've gone through every single Premier League club for an episode in quite a while. So do let us know what you think in the comments below, because you know there is a bit of nuance lost when you're talking about every single club trying to get through every single top signing. So I'm sure there are points that you've disagreed on. Let us know in the comments below. But yeah, keep it friendly. Don't be sending people abuse in the DMs. But thanks for joining once again, James.
Don't worry, normal. You know, working
Doogie is back next week.
Doogie's back next week, so you won't see me. But it's been fun. It's been lovely to catch up again. And
well, you're welcome anytime on the channel.
Yeah, but I mean, probably won't be because you know Doogie's such an expert. But yeah, it's been lovely to be on.
Yeah, well, who knows? I know you have your own work responsibilities as well, so I do appreciate you coming on, James, taking time out of your day to appear on Sunday Vibes. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like, subscribe to Football Daily if you haven't done so already, and we will be seeing you tomorrow, myself and Doogie, to round up the Manchester derby and other things. So yeah.